everybody, I'm Jeremy and it's pronounced Bag. Today we're finally back at the dyno. We got the Unitronic Stage 1 Plus with the 93 octane tune on here. We're going to see what the difference is between that and the APR Stage 1. I know it's not really a fair comparison, but this is what I'm running right now. We want to see if there's any improvements. The other thing I did is we've got the Carbon Labs turbo inlet on here. And so we'll see if that makes any difference at all. I think the other thing we added since last time was the DPS tuning, pre-muffler delete on the exhaust. So let's check it out and see what happens. We'll take any guesses in the comments below. All right, so we're doing a series on this. We're gonna compare the APR tunes and the Unitronic tunes in more ways than just one. We're gonna get some track time with the car, we swap back and forth. But I'm also gonna do in this video, a little bit later after the dyno run, we'll hit up and do some driving impressions between the two. You can just hear my thoughts after driving around on both of them for a couple of months.
In it, and then when you find your traction control off, all that good stuff.
Hey, so we just got done with our dyno run over at Carb Connection, and it's much as we expected. Really similar to the driving experiences that we've been having. APR shows an earlier hit on the torque, and then sort of really, builds the horsepower, but not quite as much as we're seeing with the Unitronic. And then Unitronic's more of a steady, smooth build to a really strong finish up to the higher RPMs where it finally switches gears. All right, so the graphs show that you've got an early hit of torque from APR, and that's what you feel. That's that more immediate response that you feel on the drivability there. And then it sort of plateaus out. It leaves a nice torque pull when you're driving it, as opposed to the Unitronic, which has a more steady build to a torque peak. Now, what's different too is the horsepower is higher in the Unitronic tune, and it also, as it builds power, it keeps it much stronger all the way through to that higher RPM before you shift. And so I think the way that those two are making the power has accounted for the difference in my 0 to 60 times. I'm able to get all of the traction that I need a little earlier on from the Unitronic versus all of the torque breaking the 4 tires loose on the APR tune. Yeah, so we'll leave you with a shot of the dyno graphs. And I'll put I'll put the figures of what we made at the wheels, and then we'll dial it up 20%, which is accounting for the drivetrain loss. So all you people who like to ask me why the figures are so low can also see the crank horsepower numbers, and maybe that'll be a figure that you're more used to seeing.
All right, so we get a lot of comments about the amount of gains that are shown, and I thought it'd be worth taking the time to explain a little bit. First of all, there are two different measurements of power that can be taken. One is at the engine and one is at the wheels. Now, depending on the type of car, whether it's all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive, you will have a different amount of loss from the engine to the wheel measurement through the drivetrain. Meaning, you may find that on a typical rear-wheel drive car, there's about 15% loss of power through the drivetrain. On an all-wheel drive car, that figure is about 20% due to the fact that you're driving all four wheels instead of just the two. Now, we're looking at the stock figures at 354 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque, and that's measured at the engine. That's from the manufacturer. We've estimated the value by doing math to get to the 283 and 295 foot-pounds of torque that would be measured at the wheel on a dyno for this car. So now we can look at APR Stage 1 and see that we've had significant gains. At the crank or at the engine, it's a plus 87 horsepower and plus 162 pound-feet of torque. That translates into plus 85 horsepower at the wheels and plus 148 pound-feet of torque at the wheels. Now, looking at Unitronic, we can see there's even more gains. So at the engine, we're looking at plus 101 horsepower and plus 179 pound-feet of torque, versus at the wheels, it's plus 96 horsepower and plus 162 pound-feet of torque. One final thing to note is that if you're coming here from our previous dyno video where we were on the dyno with the APR Stage 1, I showed the max power figures that were uncorrected, so that means the real power measured at that time. I also got the SAE corrected, which adjusts for altitude levels, humidity, and all the other things. So that's what I was able to get on this dyno run for the Unitronic, and that's what we're comparing the two against. So the figures for APR and Unitronic are both the SAE corrected figures. I imagine that the uncorrected values from Unitronic would have been much higher had I got those from the dyno shop, but I didn't, so we're comparing apples to apples.
All right. Here's one of the major differences between APR and Unitronic. I don't know how much that's like coming through.
Yes, just super in front of you is gonna think you're like pissed at them. Do you like it?
I do like it. I like the way the Unitronic drives a lot. I liked the way the APR drove, but I always felt that it left some power on the table. And so APR was good, but Unitronic seems to get, even though the numbers weren't necessarily as high as I thought, I think it just goes to show you that like having the right tune for the way you drive makes such a huge difference in the way the power is delivered, because even though the dyno numbers are higher, but not super drastically, the car feels like it pulls harder all the way up to redline, and it felt like it pulled hard, all the way up to redline before, but now it's just different. And I think that the biggest difference is, APR has that early hit of torque. I think they adjust the throttle mapping so that, daily driving gives you more throttle response than you would normally get. This file feels a little bit more smooth and stock-like until you really get into it. And then that's when you feel that, that big boost of power. And without it being, turbo laggy feeling. So I think those are some of the main differences that I've noticed. All right. Keep your bag tight.
That's not our sign off.
That's not.